Welcome to the, I don't even know what day it is anymore. Welcome to the December 11th Public CNAB Development meeting. And the agenda has been dropped into the chat window, but basically the format is we do intros and introductions. If anybody has a demo, we do that next, and then we just kind of dive into the agenda items. Do we have any announcements? I don't know of any announcements that we have this week. Okay. Any introductions we need to do? I don't think so. I think everybody here has been here many times before. So that will lead us in. I asked about demos in Slack, but I didn't see anybody respond. Did anybody have anything they wanted to demo this morning?
Or demo that is related to the agenda item about CNAB registries. Specifically, I've been working with exposing a CGO FFI for CNAB to OCI. And for a very simple definition of working, I'm able to pull and push CNAB bundles using CNAB to OCI from Rust. So if people are interested in that, I can give a quick show.
I am.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Basically, the main issue is that it's not trivial to re-implement containerd and all the libraries that CNAB to OCI depends on in other languages. So I wanted to see if I can easily make this work from another language. It's not pretty and it's not ideal, obviously, because it's CGO in the end, but at least it gives us something to work with. So specifically, this is just a re-implementation of CNAB to OCI pool. And this is exported as CGO, exported as pool. And if you do a CGO enabled build mode C shared, it generates this C header. And basically it's a pool that receives two strings, the target reference where the bundle is located and the output file that we want to write on disk. And the only difference, just because Go interfaces are, Go errors are interfaces in the end, I just return an int and basically do either 1 or 0 for failure or success. So if you don't like that, you can, we can definitely look into changing the, and then from this C header, we can generate, automatically generate Rust bindings using something called BindGen, which is a Rust crate that is built specifically for that, to get an input binding and input header and get Rust binding. So essentially, we first get some bindings for the Go types used. So specifically, we get a string, which in the end is a pointer to a character and then a length for that. And then ultimately what we're interested in is exposing a C function, which is pool that gets two Go strings and returns a Go int64. And then the only code that I've written specifically for this is here. And this is the only thing that I exposed a pool WASM function that gets two Rust strings, creates the Go strings required to interrupt with CGO, and then calls the dynamic library. If this were Linux, it would have been a shared object. If it was Linux, Windows, it would have been a DLL. And then we just return the pool function. And at this point, we can. This is what a Rust consumer would use ultimately, right? Pool WASM and then pass whatever CNAB registry used, and then a file to write on disk. So hopefully, if we do a cargo run, we should see new bundle pool.json, and we just pull the bundle, right? And then this is the relocation map. So again, it's not pretty, it's not ideal. I wouldn't necessarily use this unless I would really need to. But it's something that works and allows us to use CNAB to OCI from any language that interacts with C.
Is there anything on Go side in CNAB to OCI that we can do to simplify the process?
Not really. Honestly, it's everything was pretty straightforward. I mean, as long as we're not exposing anything that is too Go specific in the pull and push functions, we should be fine as long as we don't require, I don't know, a channel or something like that. As long as the interfaces, the pull and push functions are simple enough, the building of Go types when passing back and forth should be straightforward. One issue was returning an error, a Go error, which I just changed by using an int. But yeah, we can definitely look into getting more context out of that failure.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
It's a naive question, but did we talk at some point about storing the bundle JSON in the OCI index itself rather than having a pointer to a blob that contains the bundle JSON?
We discussed it, and I think early on, CNAB to OCI used to store it this way. Do you have a specific reason for that? Ultimately, the reason why we're storing a reference to bundle JSON in the index is because we want to make sure that we don't change the either encoding or canonical form of bundle JSON. That is because we use bundle JSON, the canonical bundle outside of registries as well, and this is the way that we can ensure that we can keep the content digest of the bundle when passed back and forth. We don't know ultimately how a specific registry is gonna encode or store in canonical or not the OCI index.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess the reason I'm asking is kind of for actually very similar to that, where we want to know the digest of the OCI index itself ahead of time before we push it for our tooling purposes, which is a little bit difficult with the, I don't think it's possible right now before pushing to know the digest, but it is if we were to only just build the index, we could digest that, but yeah.
Don't even know the content digest of an image before pushing it, let alone of an index that is composed of multiple images and the bundle.
I can do a demo at some point of the tooling we're building around Bazel that does allow you to do that before pushing.
Interested in that.
Yeah, so we can actually generate full bundle JSONs that are already hydrated with the image indexes.
There is a catch, I think, because today the Docker daemon lets you work out the repo digest before you push, but it's just coincidence that happens to be the case. So sometimes these exploratory tests work, but there are no guarantees that the Docker daemon is going to continue performing that way in the future.
And then other registries comply with the same.
Yeah, our images are, since we're using Bazel, they're actually not being built, like we're not talking to the Docker daemon at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's some assumption about the compression, etc., in the repository.
Not sure.
Yeah, because the repo digests compressed shards of compressed images.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to get the compression matching spot on with what the repo does. And the Docker daemon just happens to do that at the moment, but Docker won't guarantee that that's going to continue to be the case, trying to keep their options open, which is reasonable.
Interesting. Okay.
So you might have the same guarantee in your code that you can't guarantee that it will continue to work, depending on what happens in repos.
Right.
It's kind of depressing, but it's a shame because it's so close to being standard.
Interesting. But yeah, if we want to schedule a demo, I think I could do one in a couple weeks.
I'm definitely interested in seeing how that works.
Yeah. Going back to the Rust side, which I'm interested in, one thing I've done before is generated an interface using bindgen and then put a kind of safe wrapper on top of it with rich Rust types. So you'd have things like the bundle, Rust bundle that we've already got, and other types wrapping around the unsafe interface, so that essentially you can use it like it looks. It looks like it's good, pure Rust then, and you kind of, the user, the real user, doesn't have to touch the unsafe code. So if we want to go in this direction with the FFI, then it might be worth investing in that wrapper.
Technically, the wrapper that I had right now was it passed around two Rust strings basically, but we can definitely look into passing around a full bundle. Yeah, that would be the next step, obviously. And if we're looking into adding support for this in the CNAB crate, then yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and possibly widening the FFI to include all the CNAB Go functions.
Yeah, this was just an exploratory test to see if full works, and it works. There's no reason why push shouldn't work as well.
That's great. Just another question, just my ignorance really. What happens to the Go runtime? Is it reinitialized each time the DLL is loaded? So shared library is loaded.
But I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, the shared object is like 16 megabytes in size. So I assume it initializes the Go runtime every time. I said it's not pretty.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I'm doing double duty as note-taking and leading, and I'm doing a bad job on both. So is there anything else to discuss on that demo, or should we move along to the other agenda items?
My final question would be if people have experience in distributing software with shared objects. I mean, if we go this route and we build a Rust CLI, simple CLI, right, in Rust that uses this, we're going to need to package the shared objects, dynamic libraries, and DLLs with each operating system. Do people have experience in how to actually safely distribute that? Do we bundle the shared objects with the binary? Do we pull it at runtime? Have people done this before in a sane way?
What does cargo build do?
Without doing anything specifically, cargo build will just look on the file system. So if you remember, I just passed the path to the dynamic library in my little program. But we can definitely package it so that cargo build outputs a binary that already contains it. My only question is we're going to need to look into conditional compiling for each operating system to include its own version of the dynamic library, and then actually maintaining that dynamic library across CNAB to OCI changes. And I'm just curious if people have done this before and have best practices.
In Linux, they're usually distributed together, and the shared library is installed specifically. But that's using a fairly well-known packager system for each different distribution.
I would expect if I downloaded a tool from somewhere to already contain all dependencies.
Yeah, I mean, presumably a release of CNAB OCI would contain the shared libraries compiled for the supported platforms. And then we consume that from wherever, including the Rust side.
Reasonable, yeah. Thanks.
All right. Anything else on that one? All right. We will move on to the status of the claim spec, which was one of the items I put on there. A couple weeks ago, I got started again editing the claim spec, and then KubeCon interrupted, and so I didn't get everything done. There's one PR that I have open that's 295 that just needs a second LGTM. I think Vaughn reviewed the first version of it. And then I think it was Sylvain who pointed out that we have two other issues that need to be addressed related to claim storage. Both of those are listed in the notes, 296 and 297. So I'll take a pass at doing those two. unless anybody else wants to jump in and try those. And then Vaughn pointed out, which I opened as issue 298, that the terms installation and release get used seemingly interchangeably, and it's unclear whether they're synonyms or different things. I had intended them to be different things, but I'm not sure I was terribly clear about that. So we need to do a PR to kind of clarify some of that as well. I think that probably the next time we meet, if I can get these done by then, it would be nice to kind of go over, to keep on top of this one and just finish it off. This is a fairly lightweight piece of this spec, and also one that would be nice to have done fairly soon, because I know already Porter's has implemented it, and I don't know if other people are as well. But it'd be good to just have it there and finished off. Again, because it's not one where there's a whole lot of unsolved problems. It's just one where we need to clarify and tidy things up, rather than solve elaborate cryptographic problems. So with that in mind, are there other things we want to make sure we get in there that are not tracked as issues? Or any other discussion items related to that?
I guess, what is your definition of a release?
So how I had originally tried to specify it was an installation was the creation, the initial creation of the claim. So when you install, which is typically the way you create a claim, that becomes an installation, and a release is each modification to that. So if I install version 1, I've created an installation for version, if I install foo version 1, I've created an installation for foo. And then each time I upgrade it, I create a new release of that. But releases are not tracked in the claim spec, only installations are tracked in the claim spec currently. So,
okay.
But the language got it all muddied because,
yeah.
So I think it just needs somebody to go through and read through and clarify everything and see if we even need to discuss what we even need to discuss there. We might be able to just eliminate one term altogether from the lexicon, which would be nice.
I do feel like just the term installation is sufficient when you pair that with revisions, which are already part of the spec, right?
Yeah.
So you can refer to a release by its installation and revision.
Yeah.
And then I don't think we really need to mention releases.
Yeah, I agree. I think we can probably eliminate that.
I think release has some unfortunate connotations as well.
Helm, yes. At least that's what I'm thinking of. I've had confusion already internally with, okay, what's a CNAB installation versus a Helm release?
Yeah.
And, really, they actually map one-to-one basically, but.
All right. Well, I will work on clarifying that too. Right.
I also have an open PR for CNAB Go to enable integration indent testing for the Kubernetes and Docker drivers. If anyone cares to look at that, it's using Kind to spin up a cluster dynamically.
Yeah, if you wanna drop a link to that in.
Yeah, it should already be in the CNAB channel. Yeah, if you just scroll up a little bit. It's 165. And I'm planning to do, I self-assigned the Kubernetes driver outputs support issue. So I was planning to work on that. So this is a precursor to that, so we can actually see the integration test being executed when that comes in.
That sounds good.
One other question that I have about both CNAB Go and Duffel is we've moved them to the new org a while back, but the import paths are still pointing to JS Labs. Do we think it's going to be a huge disruption if we change the import paths to CNAB.io right now, or should we wait some more? And if yes, for how long? Do people have strong opinions on it?
For CNAB Go, at least, the import paths are already updated, and I closed that issue.
Duffel is still pointing to Days Labs.
It must be, yeah. Sorry, I have to switch rooms.
I think we can
switching.
Yeah, I think we can change them. We had Carolyn and I had sort of a side conversation about whether it made sense to do vanity domains for these things, but I think I'd rather for now just switch over the GitHub ones and use those. I think vanity domains are probably not useful unless you feel like you're going to be switching repositories more than once. So I think the answer then is go ahead and upgrade Duffel. Okay. All right, Radu, do you want to give a quick update, or is there anything to update on the state of the security spec? Also possibly Ralph, because I think Ralph might have talked to Trishant yesterday. Go ahead.
Pass on to Ralph.
Well, my conversation is pretty straightforward. Trishant and I had a nice chat about where it was, and we didn't talk about the specific details in it other than that he was extremely motivated to keep working on it and finish it off as fast as possible. But of course, there are code issues that for validating the spec that we need to work on, which are possibly more important. But he did not give me a specific conversation on exactly what remaining work in the spec itself that he was doing, so I can't comment on that. But he was extremely excited and motivated to give it another push and knock it off, along with all the contributors. So that's about what I can say.
One note on the implementation. So we have a Go implementation, which right now works with CNAB pools, with CNAB to OCI, and then uses Notary to push and pull trust data. And we also started a Python implementation. The main reason one of the reasons I started working on the FFI part was there's no way to push and pull bundles from the Python implementation right now. And essentially any implementation that we're going to do in Python would only be limited to pushing and pulling trust metadata. So one reason why the FFI is working right now is to add an implementation to the Rust security implementation, so that we can have an end-to-end example of how to do both pushing and pulling and updating trust metadata. So that's next in the Python implementation, just putting everything together. Technically, we have all the pieces right now to have a fully functional Python implementation, but tough. We have an implementation in Python. In Toto, there's the reference implementation in Python, and now we can push and pull. So it's a matter of putting everything together and having a coherent demo. But that's not working right now.
And to my knowledge, there has been no move in OCI registries to make too much progress on the issue that's blocking us for the CNAB registries, right?
Could we restate that issue? Can we restate that issue so that I'm clear on it?
Yeah, Radu, you want to do that while I'm taking notes real quick? Because I think it's the type stuff, right?
The first blocking issue from OCI is that an OCI index does not have the concept of a config object. So
right. I recall that one.
Any OCI index, no OCI index can have an additional type. So if we want to have a CNAB bundle type to an OCI index right now, we can't. The discussion has been with OCI to add the config object to an OCI index. But yeah, we haven't been able to go back and in theory everyone agrees, and we just have to.
Yeah, exactly. That one seems to be inertia to close it off.
Yeah.
And is there another one?
There is another one, a deeper issue, which is specifically right now any all images or artifacts referenced in an OCI index must be part of the same registry as the index. There is a push to be able to reference external artifacts in an OCI index, but that could open a bunch of different issues. So that issue is much less discussed at this point. But in theory, people would want to be able to reference artifacts in an OCI index that are either part of a different repo or potentially part of the different registry.
Right, and I recall the potential objection in that conversation being the question of circular references and garbage collection on the service side.
Yep, exactly. So while the config object seems the first one seems doable and people from OCI are not opposing it, the second one has been met with a little bit of resistance, if I can use that term.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, the resistance was basically a difference on the registry side about circular dependencies and how many levels were acceptable, and basically just different registries had different takes on that, which I understand. Okay, thanks for reminding me of that.
That second one wouldn't actually stop us from being able to release a version. It just stops us from hitting some of the idea ones, right? As soon as number one is solved, then I think we can wrap things up.
For us, not even the first one is terribly blocking, as in we can use some different OCI registries right now to distribute those CNAB bundles. But specifically, the second one, the only impact the second one has is in that it forces registry services to accept multiple images and artifact types in the same repository in order to support CNAB bundles, which people could potentially block.
I think, so we're actually using CNAB to OCI right now, just started, and we have a separate registry just for OCI images where we push bundles, and those are referencing external images outside of that registry.
So just to be clear, you can reference external images in bundle JSON. There's nothing stopping you from having a fully thin bundle. The main issue is referencing external images in the OCI index itself.
Right. When would we be doing that, though, since we're not storing the bundle in the index?
We'll be doing in, so let's say you have a bundle with 3 artifacts, 2 container images, an invocation image, and a Helm chart. That will potentially in the future be stored mainstream in OCI registries.
Sure.
Technically, if I want to move everything into a single OCI repo, I would have OCI images, Helm charts, and a CNAB bundle all in the same repository, which registry services might block. There's nothing stopping me from putting them into separate repositories and then referencing them in a single thin bundle in the registry. But if I want to have all of them under the same repository, then registries might choose to block that scenario. To have
under
types.
the same path within the registry.
Same path with different types.
Okay. Yeah, that is something that we're not actively not doing right now. We just like push them into separate paths. But, yeah.
That is a scenario that has been brought up repeatedly in this specific discussion. So it's something that we're considering, but we are aware that registries might choose to block this.
I understand now. Yeah, from a user experience perspective, that would be really nice, actually, I think, to be able to just see everything in one place. But, yeah, cool.
You mentioned cycles in the repositories a few minutes ago. When might that occur?
What you mentioned? Sorry about that.
I think there was some mention of a cycle occurring inside a registry or between registries.
I think that was brought up in the discussion of if registries allow external artifacts to be referenced in an OCI index, that so OCI index A references an image B from a different registry. If that image B has a reference to back to the same index or the same image from registry A, then you have basically a cyclic dependency where image A from first registry references an image from registry B, and then that image references it back.
But if there were digested references, then you'd have a cycle in the Merkle graph. So you'd have a SHA-256 collision.
Yes, I'm not exactly sure how this affects other internal registry operations, like garbage collection, for example.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I think cycles might be impossible to get unless you had a SHA-256 collision. And the whole registry design is predicated on that. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, that's okay. So there were, if I recall correctly in the conversation, and the conversation I'm recalling was the one that occurred between registry owners in Barcelona. And the conversation was basically that one or more registries were extremely concerned about the unknown effect on garbage collection on the service side. And it wasn't that they objected in theory to the idea. It was that without some sort of clear understanding of garbage collection, they were unwilling to move forward. In that conversation, the idea or the suggestion that there was at least initially an artificial limit on the number of references to prevent further than, say, 2 cycles or 3 cycles, some arbitrary number, which was relatively small. That was met with, yeah, maybe we could do that because it seems cautious enough to understand what might happen. I'm not addressing your point directly, Glenn. I'm just merely reporting the last status on that particular conversation.
Yeah,
I think it was related to the amount of work and element of uncertainty involved on their part.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine there could be distributed GC problems. It's just that if they were, if they were citing cycles as an issue, then that made me wonder about the design. But maybe that wasn't a necessary part of the problem.
The objection was nested references. So the first index could reference another index that has 1,000 nested references, right? So clients could be in a position where they could be bombed with an infinitely large image that they could not handle. So which a scenario that we could potentially enable with referencing this way.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you.
But I think from my perspective, the first issue, the config object in the index, is something that everybody nominally believed would be useful. And I think we're at the sort of natural inertia stage of that proposal. So I'll see if I can sort of focus my efforts on getting that one, because if we get that one, we get a whole bunch of server-side functionality essentially for free, plus CNAB itself can be unblocked for a bunch of features. And so that sounds like the first step. Does that seem reasonable?
For what it's worth, relevant people in the OCI community considered that to have been a mistake on oversight in OCI, not including the config object in index. It wasn't
I agree.
On purpose. It was never added, and it should have been.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll in the new year, I'll see if I can focus the herd to the best of my ability on that, because I love that. And I think everybody wants this job.
We can tell you love it. Well done.
Now let's see it happen.
So the last 2 items we have, I dropped on one about announcements because I don't think we've attempted in any way before to help each other kind of cross-pollinate when we're doing announcements. And in particular, as we're going into December and January, are there any that we should make sure we all kind of collectively push in the January or end of December timeframe, or is this fairly quiet for people? I'll assume that means there are no big announcements coming up. Oh, wait. Oh, that's wrong. Yeah, so in the future, I think we should kind of periodically check in and see. I think it's good to be able to retweet blog posts and things like that whenever it's appropriate. I think most of the Porter developers, Vaughn might know, but most of the Porter development has slowed down over the holidays. That would be our next project that's likely to have a release outside of CNAB spec. But I don't know if it would be in January for that. Last one, it had been suggested here and there that this be our last meeting for the year because of everybody's travel schedules and vacation, holiday times, things like that. Does anybody object to just neglecting to reconvene until January? Okay, and how should we best communicate that? Should we put that in the community, PR something into the community one saying from today to January something, we won't reconvene, or when our next, or maybe just when the next date is for one?
Yep, sounds good.
All right.
Yeah, we should update the Google Calendar as well on the group.
Yeah, who has access to manage that Google Calendar?
I'm an admin, so I'll look into it.
Okay.
I think I may be able to as well. Not sure.
Ralph volunteered. Thank you.
There you go. I've been voluntold.
All right. Okay, that sounds good. Anything else we should cover today? Okay, so let me jot this down. So next meeting will be what day in January, do we know? I can go look at my calendar, I just can't type in.
First is on a Wednesday, so probably not the first. I'm guessing the 8th.
Unless we want to meet on January 1st.
The question is, would it be the 8th or would it be the week after? Because our cadence is every other week, right? So it looks like it would be the 8th. The 8th is what's currently scheduled to be our next meeting. Or currently scheduled to be our first meeting in January. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll leave that in. Okay. Any last words, parting thoughts, etc., other topics?
Really quickly, any thoughts on renaming libcnab Rust to CNAB RS to kind of match better with CNAB Go?
Did we ever get the CNAB crate namespace?
Yeah, we own the crate.
CNAB, great.
Let's do it.
I would actually love to be added back as a maintainer there as well, on Cargo or crates.io.
Sure. Let's give me your email and I can add you again to the. I'm not sure what happened there. The main question is, do we want to rename the crate as well or just the repo? I would be in favor of just renaming the repo.
Yeah, just the repo. There's no need to add the RS context on a crate. Cool.
Sure.
Okay. All right, so the only action item there, well, we got two. Who's actually doing the rename? Reddy was going to add Jacob as a maintainer. Did somebody just volunteer to actively do the rename, or were we just voting without obligation?
Any org admin, which I am not, can do it, I think.
Oh, because it's just a GitHub rename at that point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we don't have to update any apps that use it?
I know this is, it's so much easier than having to go and update every single import path ever that referenced it.
Yeah.
Please, you people.
We should also probably start cutting releases for Cargo as well, or crates.io.
Yeah.
Do we know if we've got any consumers yet?
I doubt it if it's not on crates.
Well, okay. People might be consuming it privately with it.
Well, since we're discussing revamping that, we should also look into adding a GitHub action to test it. indent it,
Yep.
and do all sorts of things.
Wow, you guys are just totally coming up with great ways to spend the rest of your month. Okay, so now I've got add Jacob as a maintainer, change the GitHub name, cut some releases in cargo, and add a GitHub action for running tests. Then finish writing the library, then... All right.
Maybe stage 1 is just to drop issues in for those things. You know, like the CI seems like it's a substantial piece of work, so just get an issue in there for now, and then someone can pick that up when they're ready.
Yeah.
That's a better approach.
All right. So now it reads, add Jacob as a maintainer, and then create issues for the next 3 things. Do the GitHub rename, cut some releases, add GitHub actions. All right. That sound good? All right. Anything else? All right. Well, I think that concludes today's meeting. Happy holidays. We will see you all back again in January, on January 8th.
Right.
Happy holidays.
Cheers, everybody.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Chris.